Hi, Dallas Trombley here. So it's National Novel Writing Month. We're on day 4. For me, I'm at 25 pages, uh, which is great. I want to talk to you about how I got those pages and some tips and tricks to get that many pages out of 4 days of writing. And I want to talk about how reading is like dreaming and writing, therefore, is like guided hypnosis. So let's start there. I mean, unlike any other sort of form of art, let's take pictures or theater or movies. These kinds of art, they present things to your sensory organs, right? I mean, so you're watching a movie, right? You see things with your eyes. You're listening to music, you hear them with your ears, right? Reading is fundamentally different. It is not presenting stimuli to your sensory organs. It is bypassing those organs and going directly to your cerebral cortex in a way that triggers your memories, right? That's different than art, right? I can look at a painting. That is fundamentally different than hearing a painting described. The reason that reading is so intimate to the reader is that you are triggering memories. If I write the word menu, right? I'm not showing you a memory. I am triggering your idea of a menu that's based on all of the menus that you have ever looked at in your life, right? Now, think about dreaming, right? There's a great scene in the movie Inception where one of the protagonists says to another character, "How did you get here?" And the fact that the guy can't say how he got there kind of shows that he is in a dream, right? So now if I'm a writer, right, and I want to say, like, I went from my apartment to a grocery store, I don't need to say that I opened the door, I walked down my staircase, I opened the external door, I walked across the driveway to my vehicle, I opened up the vehicle's door, I turned the ignition, blah, blah, blah. You don't need to say that. All you need to say is, I was at my apartment. At the grocery store, I figured out that I needed carrots, whatever. Your mind puts those things together. That's really what your mind does, sort of fundamentally. It's called, I don't know if it's a hard G or a soft G, but gestalt or gestalt. Your mind, that's what your mind does. As a human mind, you put things together. As a writer, therefore, it's almost a trick of figuring out how big of a gap can you possibly make in order to avoid having to write all of the rigmarole of the stuff that's in the middle, right? That's the art of it. I was here, I was there. Your mind has that gestalt, just like in a dream. You don't dream everything. You dream of images, a person's face, then you have another image that you're in your house, and that maybe that person is there doing something, and it's like a 2-second impression, and then you have another impression, and then another impression. It feels as though a story has taken place, but if you think about a dream, it is really only a series of impressions. Therefore, if that's your experience and you can make a story out of that from your experience as a writer, You only need to present those experiences, and your reader will combine it all together into a story. Okay? So don't necessarily think about having to connect all the dots. Just think about presenting 5 or 6 scenes independently, and trust that your reader's mind, as a human, is going to put those scenes together. Now, I'm on page 25, which is pretty good for day 4. I think today's November 4th. But I'm also cheating in a bit, which is that, one, I'm not writing a fiction piece. I don't have to make up everything that's happening. I don't have to create characters, etc. I just have to describe something that I've already done. I now get to crib my own blog, where I've got, here's a page of writing here, or I can go to my YouTube where I verbally described and videographically described, an area. And if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then a video must be worth 10,000 words. Now I've got all this content that I've previously done, and that's the value of journaling. I mean, I don't even know if you can see, but this is a journal from when I was 17. This whole shelf is full of journals. Sometimes I'll find myself at a bus station or a train station, or, Jesus Christ, I just want to get out of the house and I'm at a bar, but there's nobody there. And as a practice, as a trade practice, I'll just write about a sunset or a bar. Like, what am I physically seeing? Or I'll transcribe like little pieces of conversation that I hear. I don't know what use that's going to serve later, but kind of recording it means that later, when I have a story and I need to describe a sunset, I can go back to my notebook and have the writing that is made off of having experienced that sunset in person because I recorded it. It's almost like if I was a carpenter and I just made and I made jigs and I made a series of like commonly used pieces of wood and the cuts that are there, so that then when I have to go to a particular job, I already have these custom-made pieces that are there. So I call it cheating because on any particular job, which is a writing piece, or by analogy, like a deck that I had to build or something, I call it cheating because I've already made these things like beforehand, so that on that particular project, I don't have to do everything from scratch. It's interesting though, from like a contractor's point of view, or a customer of a contractor's point of view, you might say, well, gee, the guy wasn't even here that long. But really, he ought to be paid more, because the fact that he pre-thought about everything, made jigs and materials and stuff ahead of time, means that he understands the entire process and is a consummate professional. So as a writer, I feel like you ought to go all in as being a writer, and whenever you have spare time, just write about anything. Write about what this notebook looks like. It's this much by this much. It's got a pink line at the top, followed by 14 blue lines this way. He was drinking a Coors Light. Interesting, this is a Coors of red cursive, but in script, gray, writing. Oh, we've got mountains that turn a color underneath. uh, based on the temperature of the can, etc. I mean, if you're just bored or not doing something as a writer, just go ahead and just like write about everything. And then you've got these individual units that are like Lego blocks that you can just plug into one another whenever they're useful. On my blog, on my website, now I have my most recent update is National Novel Writing Month, and it's got the script, the manuscript, of this book. So if you look at it, again, it's not for you to read, it's more for you to scan and look. You can see it. So every day when I add something, I'll say November 3rd, November 4th, you might see that like here's a description of something, and then like, oops, all of a sudden I add in something from my blog where I had already described it, but kind of forgot about that when I was writing, and then I add it in. So now later I'm going to have to go back and meld these two things together, but it is extremely helpful to journal over time because now you can combine everything into one unit. But first, what you have to do is make a mess. It's like when you're cleaning your house, right? And you get to this closet of yours where you have kept everything that's odds and ends, right? The first thing you have to do is take everything out of that closet, distribute it all over your house, and make a mess out of your house so that you can then put everything back together in a logical way. So the first part of writing, I think, is blah, 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 blah. Just throwing everything out there, which is like making a mess out of your mental closet, getting it out there so that you can then kind of figure out, all right, now how do I put everything together in a logical way? The way I describe on my blog what will be deleted or what will be added, I think is kind of interesting because I'm using the same method that we would use at the legislature in order to draft a bill. So you would take the law, let's say the law said, every public park shall close at 9. That's the law. That exists, and that's written, in just regular writing, right? But then let's say you wanted to get rid of the word park. You would put brackets around it and strike through it, and maybe you want to say, public land. So then you would insert the word public land, and that would be underlined as new language. So if you're looking at it, you can see the old language because it has no kind of like italics, font, bold, underlined. And it's being added because it's underlined, and it's being deleted because it's bracketed and struck through. That really allows you as an analyst, which all of us are, right? If you're using your mind and you're going through the world, you're an analyst. When you're looking at a piece of writing and you're looking specifically at how language is going to change, then it's helpful to have that sort of process or structure or agreed upon format for quickly looking at a piece of text and being like, okay, that's what's getting deleted and this is what's getting added. That way I know what the end product will look like. Again, if you look at what I have on my current blog, which is now 25 pages of writing over 5 days, I want you to just remember it's not a finished product. It's not worth reading right now, but it's more worth looking at it from 2,000 feet and seeing kind of like where the changes are. But the last thing I wanted to just talk about was the value of characters, human beings in a story. It's one thing to write an essay where you say, this is my opinion, blah, 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 and you make a legal argument. I think that, and that would be a good example of like the kind of guidebooks that exist currently of the Erie Canal, right? They're from an objective point of view. It's 7 miles between Crescent and Schenectady. once you get to Schenectady, there is a municipal dock, but it's 14 miles before you get more gas. That's very technical, right? Versus, I hope if you, at the end of this process, look at my writing, there are characters in there. There's a guy saying, I'm not going to eat with you if you're wearing the outfit that you're wearing right now because you look like an idiot. You know, or there's somebody who says, oh, I'm from Schenectady. Like, I'd love to show you about this area and this area. This is my opinion on this. My mom said this about this. There is such a value to taking your narrative, which even if you don't have real life characters, just making up characters who are giving different points of view and talking to one another and describing behaviors to them. So, again, later in this whole kind of series, I'll talk about how to make characters out of nothing by basing them on the traits of people that you already know. But that's just one thing to keep in mind. So, yeah, we're up to 25 pages. Don't forget, you don't need to fill in all the interstices of, going from point A to point B because it's very much like dreaming when you're reading. Don't forget to take notes all the time. If you're, whenever you're bored, just take notes. And it's not a finished product. Just remember, just throw everything out there. Get everything written. My friend of mine used to say, write for 10 minutes a day. You never know if it's going to be the sort of day where you spend 10 minutes and it's almost excruciating and you get 2 words out, 1 sentence out, or it's going to be a day when you end up writing 10 pages. You never know until you start. Therefore, if every day you write for 10 minutes a day, you're much more likely to have a lot of those days where you write 10 pages. And, that's really, really, really good advice. Anyhow, I'll continue this series. If you like this kind of writing, don't forget to subscribe to DallasTrombley.com. I'll help you become a much better writer, effective writer, by describing to you the traits just as though a master carpenter was trying to give some advice to a journeyman carpenter, or I don't know exactly the words when it comes to the apprenticeships. But I think you'll learn some stuff, and it's fundamentally interesting. I mean, we're talking about the mind. When it comes to writing and reading, there's really no art that is more indicative of the mind. In fact, let me just say, 2 books by Steven Pinker, How the Mind Works and The Stuff of Thought. I got another one over there that's called The Language Instinct. The point is they all revolve around language. There is something about language that makes human beings different than other animals. You can't tell a joke to a cat or a dog. We're the only ones who have an oral tradition. Before the internet, we came up with ideas and we passed them on because we have language. No other animal has language. And writing is the cementation, the preservation of language. And that's how we give knowledge from one generation to the next generation. Writing is really the basis of civilization. Anyway, I'm Dallas Trombley, and thanks for listening. Hope to see you soon. And if you like this kind of stuff, again, like and subscribe to my page, DallasTrombley.com. Thank you.